Hi, Brent.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. And all my COVID hair,
Yeah,
and
you and me,
I got
you and me
lots of it.
both. I'm a month overdue for a haircut.
Uh,
Well, hey, and you and I had a conversation earlier this week that I thought was illuminating for me, and I think one that others in our tech community, other leaders of tech companies right now, are probably wrestling with, have wrestled with over the course of the past week or two. And there's a lot of debate about it, and that's the SBA program, and specifically the Paycheck Protection Program that was opened up to a wide array of businesses. And your perspective on this, I thought, was really valuable. And in a time where we can't get together like we normally do to talk about these kinds of things, was something that we could best do via a video call. So I'm grateful for your stepping into it. Um,
Absolutely.
first,
Yeah.
First, why don't, for those of you that you're the CEO of a company called Vibenomics. For those that aren't familiar, what does the company do, and who are your customers?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So we started a audio out of home advertising network several years back, and essentially what that means, it's a mouthful, but we control location-based businesses and their audio experience, and we allow through our software companies or agencies, all the large agencies across the country can get on and geo-target and look at locations where they have their products and their SKUs. So like large grocery store chains, large convenience store chains, airports, anywhere where some of the CPGs of the country want to sell their product, they're able to now geo-target ours like they would video displays in New York City and across the place. So it's all digital, programmatic, easy to buy, easy to place, DMA driven, all of those things that you typically have for advertisers. So that's our space, and luckily we have a couple verticals not affected by COVID, like grocery stores and convenience stores that are open. And we've actually been able to use that for really creative microphone for our governor. Governor Holcomb has
Hmm.
put out some good safety messaging and educational things. So state level of what we're working on, they've used our product for that. So we've kind of switched gears a little bit to allow for some of those things to take place. But in essence, that's what Vibenomics does.
Okay. Um, and you applied. You did make the decision to apply for PPP for Vibenomics, and were among the early ones to make it through the process, get approved, and receive loan funds. What was the process like, and what were the keys to success?
Yeah, it was. I responded probably the same way everybody did. As soon as we heard about the crisis, it was immediately, the board gets together and they say, "What are you going to do? Slow down. Cut your budgets and at least by 50%. Don't hire." And you start having these panic attacks, knowing what a pandemic might mean for your business. So we went through the exercise like everybody else did of what this means, where we would have to make cuts and slow down the business significantly. Shortly after, thankfully, I felt like DC did a pretty good job of responding right away with some bipartisan legislation of, we know we cannot allow businesses to shut their doors during this time. We will get through this crisis, and when we come out of it, the worst thing that can happen is our economy is not stimulated and ready to go and move forward, and everybody's unemployed. So I thought they reacted quickly. And when we first started hearing rumblings of the different programs coming out, I did what everybody does. You dig in, you start finding out answers. And because they were moving so fast, there weren't a lot of great answers in the beginning. Nobody
Yeah.
really knew what the programs were going to be like. Once the dust settled and they did make it easy enough to apply, I certainly went ahead and did so. I thought it was an important thing for the government to do, and it was going to save a lot of jobs, and it already has. I know that they tapped out yesterday, and it'll be interesting if they refill the coffers again, but I think they will. But certainly I wanted to make sure that Vibenomics took advantage of keeping people employed and going, so we applied for the PPP.
And when you went through the process, we've had other tech CEO friends and colleagues that didn't get through as quickly as you did. You learned a lot about the banking system through this process too, and especially what enabled you to get through so quickly. And what did you learn in working with you? You worked with with a local bank in this case, right?
Yeah, I definitely had an advantage. I have been in retail for a long time. I own several car washes in Indiana that were backed and started by SBA. So I already knew the process. I knew many of the players. So that certainly helped. And people who were reaching out to me to say, how do we get through this? My number one advice was find a close friend or family member that is a banker, that is SBA approved, that you can really lean on to get you through this, because you want to be at the top of the stack. So the process, though, these banking institutions, they were exposed. I mean, they were basically getting ready to lend tens of millions of dollars, possibly more, without knowing what was in it for them, how they were going to be protected. And so kudos to the banking world that they were willing to lean in when they needed to, just with blind faith that it would be okay and the government would take care of it. But that was the biggest thing, is trying to get through that process with their exposure, what it meant for us, which documents to fill out.
Yeah. Yes, I know some of the big banks that got overrun by applications and system overloads. It was challenging in those cases to try to get through those systems when you had so many millions of people that were applying. In your case, fortunately, you had a relationship with Star and a community banking team that could respond a bit more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Vibenomics is a venture-backed startup. So you have individuals and venture capital firms who have invested in the company in exchange for a piece of ownership. There was a lot of fear that SBA rules governing PPP, specifically the affiliation rule, would disqualify venture-backed companies like yours from qualifying as a small business. You have to be generally under 500 employees, which Vibenomics is very much itself under. But there were rules there was this concern that the affiliation rule would cause you to be disqualified. How did you get around that, and what was your thought process?
Yeah, we moved pretty quickly on getting together with the board, and it's those conversations where you start thinking about, will the VC that has put this money in, are they going to allow to relax some of those controls that they put in place to protect them?
Brent, talk about that. I mean, that's what there was a lot waiting to get played out. What did those SBA rules require VCs to have to relax?
Yeah, so the affiliation rule is simply, and I go back to, when they're on the fly and trying to make everything works for all kinds of businesses, it's pretty impossible to do it. They're protecting here, which hurts other businesses in certain ways. So the way that I applied for my car washes compared to how you think about Vibenomics, it was night and day, which was very interesting to me because I was able to see both sides. But when I went to the board, their biggest thing is, your company can't be ran or governed by an institution that has more than the 500 employees. So if they have those controls, then you're lumped in with all the controls that they have with all their portfolio companies. So by simply relaxing those controls and allowing the board to have complete control of the business, it meant that my VC did not have final say, did not have complete operational control. So it was really just a couple voting power and measurements. It was basically 2 or 3 things in our operational agreements with them of releasing power that then freed us from being associated with their other portfolio companies. And that's really what it came down to. And at the end of the day, if you have as a VC, and I'm speaking broadly here, but if a lot of companies have great relationships with their VCs that they're working with, it's a matter of they're going to trust that you're going to the board makes the decisions of your business anyway. So most VCs that I've talked to have been completely fine with relaxing some of those controls to allow people to keep moving forward.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of debate about not just who qualifies to apply for PPP, but who should apply. Kind of more of the ethical question. A blowback against those that those not majorly impacted by COVID-19, who can be seen as opportunists that are chasing "quote unquote" free money at the expense of hard-hitting Main Street businesses. But as you referenced, your situation's unique in that you're also an owner of a Main Street business, like the car wash that you referenced, which actually is what inspired the creation of Vibenomics. You're seeing that market need. So how do you respond to that critique? And then how do you think about that decision for you to ultimately apply, both for car wash and then also for Vibenomics?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that luckily, one of my board members, it was almost a little jarring for me. I brought to his attention that I had gotten through. I was going to be one of the first people in Indiana to be approved and get this thing locked in, and he basically said, "You shouldn't take the money for Vibenomics." And it was a little jarring, but it really gave me pause for a second when he started to explain, look, you're a VC backed company. You have other means of finding funds and money, and leave this money out there for other Main Street businesses. Like Prime is going to be more affected than Vibenomics is. And I went to bed with that stirring, thinking, boy, am I not a good person? Am I thinking about this the wrong way? And really, I woke up the next day and I started thinking about the spirit of what the PPP is all about. And I looked at both Prime, my car washes, and Vibenomics. And what I actually thought is, I don't need the money right now for Prime Car Wash, because I really don't want people just in that position where it's not helpful for them. I can write out, we planned for this, we have money back for it. So our positions were a little bit different. Where Vibenomics was a whole different ballgame, where we actually were going to truly save jobs. And I had no choice but to downsize my company if I don't take this money. And the reason is not because VCs are heartless or they're not going to care about the world. By nature, their business is to inject money to grow money. They know that we're going to be burning capital all the time, and they're going to keep feeding as long as we're growing. If that is not happening, just by nature, their first thought is, we can't give you any money until you start showing an upward curve, which means they would have said, hey, Brent, we're going to give you the money, but we're going to pull back, and you need to lay off 50% of your force. We're going to pull all expenses back. And when we come out of this thing, then we'll inject more capital, which was completely against what the spirit of the PPP is. Now, because of that money, everybody has stayed on board. We are leaning into opportunities. And when we come out of this thing, I'm going to continue to be able to hire more people and go faster because of that money. And it was just a complete mind shift of slow down or keep the course and keep people employed. And I'm very, very thankful that the DC was able to get that money out quickly, turn it around fast, and we're using it to keep people working and leaning in.
Yeah. Well, Brent, I always appreciate the conversations with you and the perspective, particularly as you're looking at this through a couple different lenses. And I also appreciate your leadership and your bravery and being able to do the best we can in this circumstance to have these kinds of discussions. It's good food. It's good food for thought and fodder that all of us as business leaders are having to grapple with right now. So thanks for investing the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the chat. I appreciate it. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.